What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Steelers Pregame Scout. It's not Matt Geica this week. It's me, Nick Fairbach, here with, of course, Derrick. Derrick, we're ready to break down X's and O's, all of that good stuff from Browns, Steelers. Obviously, this is probably the biggest game of the year for the Steelers. Both these teams sitting at 6-3. The Steelers win this game, they start to create a little bit of separation and move to 3-0 in the AFC North and have huge playoff implications. So this is just a big game in general. But Derrick, I do want to talk about the Steelers kind of a little bit more. We kind of know the Browns a little bit. We'll talk about some changes with Dorian Thompson-Robinson and everything, but let's talk about the Steelers' run game to kick this off. It's been obviously much better in the past 2 weeks. It kind of first showed signs of life when they broke out against the Rams in the second half, and then against the Titans and the Packers, they have really come to life. 2 straight games of over 150 rushing yards or more. What have they done in the run game to kind of let that go out, whether that's personnel changes, schematic changes, and all of that?
Yeah, so I wrote about this on the Steelers Now site a couple of days ago because I think that's been one of the biggest things in terms of the Steelers finding some sort of identity on offense. You know, they've been able to run the football effectively. They're a top 5 team in rushing success rate, rushing EPA per play since the bye week. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like what they were doing really well last year after the bye, just finding that identity on offense. I mean, the way that they've done it, I think they've leaned into more like gun run stuff. You're seeing of a more varied attack too. Like last year specifically, and early this year, they were heavy zone, like pretty much strictly zone run game, and like just relying on that. And I think they became a little bit over reliant, especially when you talk about their personnel. But now they're mixing in some gap concepts. You're seeing some pulling guards. You're seeing Broderick Jones pull. And of course, there's some personnel changes, right? Like, I don't think the insertion of Broderick Jones into the lineup is like a fluke thing. Like, that was on purpose to help get this run game started. He's really done that. I mean, even beyond him, you're seeing more personnel with, Darnell Washington. They've been a much better out of 11 personnel this year. But in order to get him on the field, it was kind of difficult because they had Pat Freiermuth. But with Freiermuth injured, it's almost been a blessing in disguise because you could play Washington as the single tight end. So I think it's a bunch of different things, but they're starting to find some sort of identity on offense, and that's much needed.
Well, Pat Freiermuth reported today gonna be activated. This could be very good in some ways, very bad in others. It depends on how Matt Canada kind of approaches this, Derrick. But what can Pat Freiermuth add to the passing game, and how can they avoid the run game struggles that he had before he went out?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is I just want to make sure that they are still trying to spread teams out to run the ball. I just think the stuff that they were trying to do with the 12 personnel, the condensed sets, it really was not working. I think it was putting too much stress on them up front. But with Freiermuth back in the fold, I still think you can be creative about when you deploy Washington and those single tight end sets. What you don't want to do is make it a tendency thing. Like when Washington's in the game in 11 personnel, you run the ball. When Freiermuth's in the game, you throw the ball, because that'll be something that over the course of as the weeks stack up, teams will begin to pick up on. But I still think that you can use both of them. And, if you do want to use 12 personnel, flex Freiermuth out into the slot. Like, let him do some different things. The Steelers are seeing a ton of cover too. So maybe you can use him, underneath or, up the seam to split the safeties, do some things like that to help kind of alleviate some of those zone coverage problems that they've had throwing the ball.
Yeah, when he was in there, they would have him base block a lot of edge rushers, kind of killed run plays on his own. Very interested to see what he can do because he could definitely be a boost to the passing game, but also could be a hindrance to the run game. So Matt Canada obviously going to have to get creative with his implementation. But obviously, the big talking point outside of the run game that we talked about with the pulling guards and Broderick Jones and all of that, they have done very well there. That's kind of been Matt Canada's specialty throughout his career, is engineering run games, but the passing offense has not followed suit, even when they faced a Jair Alexander-less Packers secondary that they should have certainly done more that they had against them. Kenny Pickett was not able to get anything going. The offensive line still allowed a little bit of pressure. It still kind of got to Kenny Pickett. Pat Canada, I thought, called 2 really good games before that. I thought it kind of was uninspired against the Packers. I didn't really see anything crazy against them. But this passing offense right now is just stagnant. It's probably the worst it's been all year which is interesting considering you would expect it to go up with the run game, but instead it's gone back. What's it going to take for this passing offense to not even? I'm not even talking about becoming a good passing offense. They only need it to become an average passing offense, Derek.
Yeah, like showing some sort of life. Man, like I don't know. Like I do agree that Canada had called some pretty good games. I mean, I thought that the Jaguars game, there was some good stuff in there, but I thought the Titans game was the best game that I've ever seen him call. I was less inspired about the Green Bay game plan just because of how simplistic it was. Like, listen, man, like Kenny only had, I would probably say 15. I don't know. I could look at the numbers, but like 15, like pure true pass and dropbacks. I mean, you're sitting there running like play action bootlegs 3, 4 times. You're getting some sprint out option stuff, and all that's fine. And I guess maybe the point behind that is to get him settled down, particularly in the beginning of games. But there's not a lot of stuff in this passing game right now. It's either go balls back shoulder or they're doing some sprint out like play action bootleg stuff. And it's like, what else do we have that we can move the football on? And like you said, they don't need this passing game to be this electric. They don't need to turn into the greatest show on turf, but they need to be able to rely on, the quarterback to make some plays. And just like recently over the past month, man, like I don't know. He just does not look like 100% comfortable back there and like what he's seeing, making some mental mistakes. I thought last week there were a couple questionable decisions too. So I don't know, man. It's just really frustrating because it feels like even as like the rushing game and, some stuff with the defense feels like it's trending upward in the right direction. He seems like he's, a little bit stagnant and it's kind of holding back a little bit of their progress.
It's kind of interesting because I also think a part of this is his. I don't think the chemistry with the wide receivers is that great. If you heard about the Deontay Johnson miss, which I'm sure you've highlighted, which was on the near Jalen Warren interception, it really wasn't a bad read by Kenny, technically, because Deontay just saw the coverage and read it, but the innate chemistry was not there for Kenny to kind of read Deontay. So I do wonder if there's not that connection between those guys yet in the passing game. And also, they haven't really had a third option outside of the running back. So Pat Freiermuth, I think, will help there.
For
So
sure.
we'll kind of see where it goes. But I do think the offensive line has played better in pass pro. Now, this week, that could become a little tougher, Derek. But we'll kind of see where it goes. But let's talk while we're on the Steelers offense. Let's just ricochet over to the Browns defense, since this is the unit they will be facing. This Browns defense might be the best unit in the NFL in terms of defensive metrics. You look at it, they've got the front, they've got the second level defenders, they've certainly got the secondary. Only real notable injury to this group this week will be without Juan Thornhill in the secondary. But up front, they are a terror led by Myles Garrett. In the back, they have two very good corners, and Grant Delpit is having his breakout year. And of course, at the second level, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah leads them. Give me a rundown of this defense. Jim Schwartz seems to be doing a lot of things too, and it looks like this defense is really going to give the Steelers a stiff test.
Yeah, the Cleveland defense is it's terrifying. Like when you watch it on film, it's just as scary as like some of the numbers that you see are, to be honest with you. You mentioned many of the, studs that they've got over on that side of the ball. I think really everything starts up front. But you just look at some of the numbers too. They're first in success rate playing man, first when playing zone, first when rushing four, and first when blitzing. So I mean, you always try to, like, when you're starting your game plan, try to figure out like, all right, what are they struggling with? What do they really do well? Well, the Browns do pretty much everything well. I mean, that's like really, it's very, very difficult to throw the ball on them because of the corners that they have. Ward, Newsome, Emerson, all those guys can press. Even Newsome, he could play inside, outside. They have different skill sets and different body types. Pass rushers. I mean, we've seen Myles Garrett for however many years now. I mean, we know what the Steelers are going to do to him. They're going to give him a ton of attention, chips, double teams, all that stuff. Steelers just got to make sure that they don't get in third and long situations, because that's when like Schwartz seems to dial up all these exotic looks. They do a lot of post snap rotation. They've ran some like double slot blitzes in the past couple of weeks that have given some quarterbacks issues. So it's a lot of stunts, a lot of movement. They're moving Myles Garrett around. So it's a very difficult team to game plan for, not just because of personnel, but because of some of the stuff that Schwartz himself has like brought to the defense. And that's how you go from being, a bottom third defense or wherever Cleveland finished last year to being, arguably the best defense in the league.
And they have just done that. The Steelers are kind of an interesting matchup for them just because the Steelers do have talent at wide receiver. Derek, how could this passing we saw the passing game against them last time really didn't do anything except for hitting one big play to George Pickens, which really actually changed the game in terms of that. What do they have to do to hit big plays against what is an aggressive defense that plays a lot of man coverage? So if you trust Deontay Johnson has given Denzel Ward trouble in the past. We know George Pickens is certainly talented enough, even if he goes up against Everson, Newsome, and Ward to make plays. What does the passing offense have to do to maybe just hit a few plays to help this Steelers offense kind of start to move the ball just a little bit? Because as you mentioned, the Browns defense leads the NFL in third and three and out percentage, I believe, at 35% of drives.
Yeah, I think that's going to be big too. Like being able to sustain drives is something that the Steelers have not done a great job of. A lot of three and outs on offense. The Browns do a really good job, getting the ball back to their offense. The Browns, like I said, the number one team in terms of playing man coverage, not just in success rate, but also just in terms of usage. They're a top three team in usage pretty much on every down. They are willing to bring pressure up front and then trust their guys on the back end to make plays. So the Browns are they're not going to be scared of like the Steelers receivers. They trust their corners against anybody. It doesn't matter who you roll out there. So, the strength of this Steelers offense probably, aside from their running game here recently, probably just from a personnel standpoint, is George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. Like the Steelers definitely trust those guys in man coverage. Now, here's the thing: like even though they are aggressive, and Kenny's probably going to have to make at least like one or two downfield throws in this one to back this defense off. You can't be over reliant because the Browns are going to play some middle field close. Like they're going to trust their guys on the boundary. We don't need 6, 7, 8 go ball attempts. That's not the way that you really go after them. I do think that Baltimore, when I saw that them have some success, they had some success running some crossers over the middle of the field against cover one. So like cover one, you get your defensive backs playing like outside leverage. They'll bring pressure. So sometimes there's not even like a whole defender to collect crossers over the middle of the field. You can kind of put some speed at number 3. So maybe put Deontay Johnson in the slot, run him across the formation. Of course, that's dependent on the pass rush, being slowed down by the offensive line. But I think, it's going to be difficult. We saw in the first matchup, George Pickens made that explosive play. Kenny hit him over the middle, and they were able to, take advantage of that coverage bust. This game's going to really come down to, I think, which offense can make that one or two explosive plays on offense through the passing game. And that's probably who's honestly going to win the game. Because if you take care of the football and then make, 2 big plays on offense through the air, I think that might be enough.
Kenny Pickett has been pretty good at taking care of the football, but probably has had some luck go his way. But still, that has been a big part of their formula. This game obviously presents a lot of challenges in that area, whether it's Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith and those guys coming off the edge and maybe get strip sack, or those all obviously big playmakers in the secondary. What does Kenny Pickett have to do in this game to engineer the Steelers on the road to victory?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Kenny, man, I think the pre-snap stuff is going to be really important because Schwartz, like I said, they do a lot of post-snap rotations. They throw a lot of different blitz looks at you. Like I mentioned, they're starting to use that like double slot blitz. That's particularly problematic for quarterbacks that like to, instead of hitching up at the pocket, they like to roll out. You spin, whatever. You might run into a slot blitz or something like that. So I think pre-snap looks for him is going to be really important. But like I said, man, I don't think that anyone in their right mind, just based on like how he's played, how this passing offense in general has looked, is going to be able to expect him to go out there and throw for like 250 and 3. Like I just don't think that's going to happen. But I do think, if he takes care of the football and they're able to engineer, a couple nice drives leaning on the run game, and then he's able to make 2 really big plays, whether that be on third down or explosive play conversions. Maybe he hits a go ball to Deontay or George Pickens, maybe a back shoulder, something like that. He just needs to make 2 or 3 really big plays, and they need the run game to look like it's looked over the past month, which is not going to be easy because the Browns stopped the run at a much higher rate than they did last year too. I think Kenny just needs to do what we've asked him to do: take care of the ball and make sure you make at least a couple plays, and I think they'll be fine on offense.
Now, Derek, there is one thing that I have noticed when looking at when this Browns off defense kind of struggles at times. It can be teams that give them trouble on the ground, and that's something that Steelers have the potential to do. What does Matt Canada have to do? What do these offensive linemen have to do? What do the running backs have to do to get the run game going? And maybe it doesn't have to be, what they did against the Packers, but what can they do to have an efficient run game to get kind of ahead of the sticks, maybe hit a few of those explosive runs with Jalen Warren and Najee Harris? And how real do you think the switch in this running game is? Is it a fluke, or is it something that is very sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is sustainable to a T. I don't know if they are a top 5 true threat the rest of the way in terms of the run game. The only reason I say that is because they've taken advantage of some teams playing with some really light boxes. You think about the Titans, the Packers, even the Rams. All those teams really like to play light boxes. Now the Cleveland defense is a little bit different with Schwartz. Like he doesn't necessarily lean on as much like 6-man box fronts, which could be problematic, like I said, but it does open up some stuff in the passing game. You're only going to have one safety back there a decent amount of the time. You mentioned Grant Delpit at the beginning of the broadcast. He is playing probably the best football of his career. They're using him a lot near the line of scrimmage as a blitzer, as a cover guy. He's had a really, really strong year. JOK, we know what he can do just from an athleticism standpoint. He's a guy that likes to shoot gaps, stuff like that. The thing that makes the Browns defense more difficult to run against this year, I feel like, is Dalvin Tomlinson and Mo Hurst. Some of the guys that they brought in just to kind of counter them getting gashed up the middle. That used to be the way that you could really get after the Browns. I think now it's really just going to come down to like this Steelers offensive line. They're going to have to win at the point of attack. I mean, it's really that simple to me. I want to see them still rely on the gun run stuff, spread this Browns unit out. I don't think they're getting into like heavy personnel and like condensed formations the way. I just don't think that this team's built like that. But I think you can spread them out, live in the 11 personnel world, and they're gonna have to hit. They're gonna have to hit a couple explosive runs too. But Jalen Warren, and Najee Harris, they've been doing that the last couple of weeks.
All right, now let's switch over to Steelers defense, Browns offense. But let's talk about the Steelers defense first. Obviously, Derek, a lot of changes here just because injuries have happened. Cole Holcomb and Quan Alexander are out. Mark Robinson and Landon Roberts will play more. Michael Walker also expected to come up from the practice squad for this game. In fact, I've been in the locker room talking to Michael Walker. I expect Michael Walker to start in this game, which is going to be interesting. Trenton Thompson will start at safety. No Keanu Neal, no Minka Fitzpatrick, and up front, of course, no Lontravius Adams. So a lot of personnel changes on this defense. Damontae Casey and Trenton Thompson are your starting safeties. It's a very good chance that your dime backer is going to be Elijah Riley. So a lot of changes for this group. What can they do to stave off this Browns run game? I think that's the big thing that's going to be in this game. But let's just talk in general first. What have you seen from this Steelers defense since the bye week and since some of these injuries have hit?
Yeah, I mean, look, man, they're fighting for their lives out there. Just with the amount of guys that they've had to shuffle in that they had no intention on playing, I think it's been really unfortunate that Quan and Cole Holcomb ended up going down with injuries because I think those two dudes were playing some really solid ball for them in the middle. The Steelers defense has been a good unit. I brought this up in a YouTube video that I made a couple days ago, but they've been a good unit over there, been able to force a ton of turnovers. They lead the NFL in turnovers force right now. But the thing that's holding them back, man, is they're just giving up way too many explosive pass plays. I mean, I think against the Packers, they gave up 6 explosive pass plays. I mean, it's just not sustainable like that. They've done a really good job in the red zone. Heck, they held the Packers to 1 for 5 in the red zone. So they've done a lot of really good things well. It's just I think that with so many new pieces, they're just not executing all 11 guys at the same time, and they're allowing some explosives. And that's something that I think the better quarterbacks are going to be able to take advantage of. Now, can DTR take advantage of that? I'm not really sure. DTR is not really a downfield thrower, not a very accurate quarterback in terms of like throwing the ball deep. So that'll be something to watch with this game. We talked about Kenny Pickett only really probably needing to make, 2 or 3 really big plays and trying to pull out like an ugly victory against the Browns. Well, DTR is probably in the same situation. If he can make 2 or 3 really big plays and take care of the football, he's going to give the Browns a good chance to win. So I think that creates a really interesting kind of comparison there between the two quarterbacks.
And Derek, we've talked about this, how the Steelers have actually done a pretty nice job on first and second down, getting teams into tough spots on third down, but even on 3rd and 7 or longer, they are one of the worst third down and long teams. I think they have the 3rd worst conversion percentage allowed in the NFL so far. And a lot of that is due to those miscommunications and also due to the lack of true speed they have on the back end. But a lot of it is
Yeah.
miscommunication right now with all the new guys in. Like Elijah Riley allowed Luke Musgrave right up the seam on a 3rd and long. I think 4 of those 6 explosive plays through the air came on 3rd and long for the Packers, including that doesn't even include the 3rd and 7 touchdown to Romeo Doubs, which was a clear miscommunication between KZ and Levi Wallace. So very, very interesting to kind of see what the Steelers can do in 3rd and long because as you said, you wouldn't expect DTR to be able to torch them, but did you expect Jordan Love to be able to do what he
Yeah.
did either? So we will see kind of how that goes. What are you looking for from the front this week? Jerome Ford is going to be, I would imagine, a pretty big part of the game plan. Him and Kareem Hunt to try and kind of take some of the pressure off Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But the Steelers, to their credit, have been a much better run defense. The stats might not completely bear it out because they usually do allow 1 pop per game, like they allowed the big run to A.J. Dillon last week. But they kind of held Derrick Henry and Tyjae Spears in check for the most part. Travis Etienne didn't have like a massive game against them. So there is good signs for the run defense since Cam Hayward has returned over the last 2 games. What do they have to do to really slow down this new look Browns run offense, which last week didn't even run out of 12 and 13 personnel much, Derek? It was a lot of shotgun stuff.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting comparison too. The Browns trying to get a little lighter, trying to get some light boxes, spread teams out a little bit more. That they've always been a team that's utilized multiple tight ends, and David Njoku's a good blocker. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. You mentioned the Steelers' run defense; it was fine last week. 31% success rate. That's going to get the job done. I think that we need to see more of that this week, just in terms of the front. I think Keanu Benton's playing some really good ball. I know you and I have talked about him a ton on Twitter, writing about him. I think he's had a fantastic rookie season, especially compared to, his peers and things like that. But, Cam Hayward coming back hasn't done much as a pass rusher, but I do think he's helped stabilize some of the run defense stuff, just holding the point of attack. The dude's still strong as an ox. But I think, the run game stopping Jerome Ford is going to be really important. You think about Ford last time they played, busted that long run. He broke containment. Levi Wallace let him get outside, and he has the speed to create those explosive plays. So that's goes back to the theme of the show. Got to make sure that you keep a lid on some of these explosive plays. Force DTR, force the Browns run game to kind of go at you. Kind of with these 10 or 12 play drives. Now, one thing about the Browns front offensive line that I think is noteworthy, their guards do an exceptional job in space. You can pull those guys; they get to the second level really well. So that's really important, especially with the Steelers, playing some new linebackers this week.
Yeah, it seems like something that's going to be real big for them. But there's the threat of DTR taking it this one as well. Now
Good
the
athlete.
Steelers did do a nice job of holding Lamar Jackson in check when they faced them. Aside from the one big bust that he had, how do you think the Steelers are going to one try and stop the DTR stuff on the ground because he's very dynamic with his legs, but two, something that they did extremely well in the first matchup and why they won the game was they got to Deshaun Watson all night long in that game. Jedrick Wills and DeJuan Jones didn't really hold up against them, and even Wyatt Teller got kind of beaten a few times in that game. What do they need to do up front to disrupt the DTR? That's something that I think is going to be big. Can they force him into turnovers?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what type of offense they play. So, like last time we were seeing Deshaun Watson for just the second time, it was like, okay, what's the Watson type offense look like? They're going to try to blend what Stefanski likes to do with what Watson likes to do. With this kind of abrupt decision here, Watson, being announced out for the season, like what all does Stefanski put in for DTR? So, like DTR does a pretty good job at quick game. We mentioned that he is a good athlete. He is a pocket passer first, but he has the mobility, the athleticism to break off some runs as well. So, like, I don't know if they're going to have any more like designed run packages for him than they would like for Deshaun, but it wouldn't surprise me like on a short week where you just get announced a starter midweek or whatever, it wouldn't surprise me that they put something like that in there. Um, we mentioned, them running more from shotgun and things like that. I think what they're going to probably try to do is take advantage of, probably moving Amari Cooper around the formation. I think that they're going to target a lot of, I think this might be a David Njoku game where they try to get maybe both those guys in the slot or Njoku working as the number 3 to the trip side or whatever, and take advantage of some of the matchups with some of these Steelers players, particularly the linebackers, the safeties, the guys that, honestly, we weren't planning on having to play over the course of the first, 10 weeks of the season. So I think they're going to probably try to look at some of those matchups because we know the Steelers are going to play man coverage. That's what they do. So that I think that they're going to continue to do that this week. I think they're going to probably increase the blitz rate on DTR. That's just a hunch that I have to try to speed him up and confuse him, maybe force him into some turnovers.
And one last thing here when it comes to this, obviously the new faces with Thompson and Walker and those guys are going to be stressed in this game to a degree. But every time I talk to people this week, when you talk about the rookie quarterback, the pressure that the Steelers can get, they always go back to C.J. Stroud in Houston and say, well, could that be a similar game plan that they implement? Do they take things from that Houston game plan and try to slow down the Steelers pass rush? Do you think that is replicable in moments like this? And how much can DTR kind of get the ball out quick enough to where it can be out before TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith even get there? Mainly considering, as we kind of haven't mentioned just yet, the Steelers' lack of interior pass rush outside of Keanu Benton has really shown over the past few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the play action stuff, moving the launch point is something that Stefanski could very well lean into. I think it would be smart for him to lean into, especially because the Browns tackles, they've got some health issues over on that side of the ball right now. Jedrick Wills on IR. They're going to be probably playing at least one backup, maybe two throughout the course of this game. We've seen what Highsmith and Watt can do, especially when you put them up against like inferior competition like this. They're. I would think that the Browns are probably going to be very cautious about letting those two just wreck the game plan. So I think you're going to see a lot of quick passes. I think with DTR's just mobility and the way that he can get out of the pocket, I think they're going to probably mix in a lot of like bootlegs. You'll probably see some move the launch point stuff, some calculated max protection shot plays down the field to try to take advantage maybe of, the Steelers' lack of speed in the secondary. It's going to be very interesting because this is a game that I think is difficult to game plan for just because – whenever you get a quarterback that you just don't like, DTR's played one game in his career aside from the preseason. There's just, and even that start against the Ravens, like he found out that more that he would go. So like the game plan was not even for him. So we don't even really have like a good frame of reference on how they're going to use him, which creates a little bit of a element of mystery, I guess you could say. But it's gonna be a fun game, man. I think I keep going back to turnovers. Like they've got to force him into like one or two bad turnovers, whether it's a strip sack, whether it's an interception. They get a couple turnovers. We know what the Steelers can do, in terms of like pulling out these really ugly victories, which I 100% anticipate this game being extremely ugly and hard to watch. But if they pull out, two turnovers, I think they got a really good chance.
All right, I'll put you on the spot. What's the prediction?
Oh man, I think I saw something about the over under being like
33,
30,
yeah.
33. I mean, that is insanely ugly. I'm going to say the Steelers win 17-13. That's what I'm saying.
17-13?
17-13. I think
All
they do
right.
a good job. They force a couple turnovers. I think the offense does just enough, but I think this is 100% one of those games where Steelers Twitter is on fire and they're almost more mad that they won than anything else because I think it's going to look extremely ugly.
Matt is 7-3 team in the league if that happens. Then
100%.
it'll be
100%.
crazy. Derrick, tell them where they could find you, read your stuff, all that good stuff, man.
Yep, SteelersNow.com. Just follow me on Twitter, YouTube, Steelers_DB. I appreciate you jumping on. I know Matt's it's killing him to miss out on the pod, but did a great job filling in as the host.
Yeah, as always, man. Thanks for allowing me to come on. As always, folks, always make sure to read stuff at SteelersNow.com. You can find more stuff from me and Derrick over there. Also, subscribe to the Steelers Now YouTube channel. You got Alan and Smitty on Steelers Afternoon Drive. Always, you got pregame scout every Saturday or Wednesday, I guess, if it's on a short week. And then you have basically little bits of everything else, whether that's interviews, special little stand-up stuff, and whatever. Make sure to check that out, folks. And as always, thanks for listening.